And welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I'm your host, Brad Swail. Today, I have the honor of welcoming to the show Senator Tan Parker of Senate District 12. Senator Parker's legislative accomplishments represent his extensive work fostering Texas's economic vitality and protecting our most vulnerable. Senator Parker currently sits as the vice chair of both the Criminal Justice and Veterans Affairs Committees, as well as the chair of the Republican caucus in the Senate. Senator Tan Parker, it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Well, it's an honor to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So I gave a pretty brief description there. You want to dive in a little bit more on that?
Well, look, I have a lot of great roles I'm blessed to be a part of in the Texas Senate. Leading the Republican caucus is a tremendous honor on all of our major priorities, obviously, from a party perspective. But being able to be the vice chairman of criminal justice is a terrific honor, and taking care of our vets as vice chair. Nothing more important to me than making sure that our veterans know that we love them and we're taking care of them better than any other state in the country. It's vitally important that Texas maintain that positioning and posture. So having the honor of being a part of those things is just a great honor for me every day.
Yeah, that's great. So I appreciate you coming in. We're talking on Wednesday, September 3rd. This will come out on Friday, September 5th. You know, some things may change in the next 48 hours. It is the special session after all.
That's right.
So, but there's some things that have definitely happened. And I want to talk to you about SB 11, the affirmative defense for trafficking victims, which you championed and you authored.
Yes, it's a very important bill. I'm delighted that we were able to pass it. It's now gone through both chambers. It's now sitting on the governor's desk. Look, I've been in this fight to stop human trafficking for a long time, since I was a freshman member of the House back in 2007, 2008 timeframe. I was really very blessed to be the first Republican to lead that effort. And I've been carrying lots of legislation over the years to stop human trafficking. But this is really the culmination of almost 20 years of work, because the affirmative defense really turns things upside down in terms of where they've been. It really allows us to go after the true perpetrators of crime. We'll see an increased, I think, elevation in the number of prosecutions of the traffickers, while recognizing that these individuals that have been trafficked are true victims. And so giving them the opportunity on the front end of the process to have an affirmative defense is really a game changer. And for those reasons, I believe you'll have more individuals that have been trafficking victims come forward and help us to get prosecutions accomplished successfully with the real perpetrators first and foremost. But at the same time, we're stopping the victimization of what's been occurring with all these incredible folks that have gone through the most difficult and trying of circumstances. As we know, trafficking knows no boundaries, no limitations. It affects every zip code, rich and poor alike. And it's a horrific thing that's been occurring for too many years in this state. We're proud Texans. Everything is bigger and better in Texas. And unfortunately, we've had just too much rampant work taking place in this space. Too many of these horrific perpetrators have been out there trafficking young kids, both girls and boys, as young as 3 and 4 years old. It's just the most ungodly and disgusting thing. And so making certain that we stop it in Texas is vitally important. What we do here in Texas obviously will be modeled by the rest of the country. And that's why this Senate Bill 11 is so important. I'm very grateful to Governor Abbott and to the Lieutenant Governor and my colleagues in the Senate and the House for passing this piece of legislation, because it'll make a big difference in this fight to protect our survivors of human trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, as a father, when you say 3 and 4 year olds, I know I've known that. That's not news to me, but it's still disgusting to hear it every single time. It's really gross.
Well, it's really rough. And as a father of daughters myself, my girls were young 20 years ago. They're now college and grad school age. And that's when I just saw what was going on. My eyes were open to what was taking place. And I got very involved in this fight. And it really started with me carrying a bill back in 2009 that passed called Jenna's Law. That was the first bill of its kind in America to work to specifically end child sexual abuse in Texas. We're the first state in the country to do that. And then you flash forward 16, 17 years, we were able to get that into about 34 or 35 states. And then it now became the federal law of the land at the end of last year. But in working to end child sexual abuse, then it opened up my eyes to understanding what was happening, the complexities of human trafficking. And that's why I've been so blessed to be in this fight now for all these years ever since. But this bill, Senate Bill 11, really is the culmination of all those years of work with my colleagues. I'm grateful to all of my colleagues in the House and Senate over the years that have been a part of this effort to eradicate human trafficking in Texas once and for all is our objective, obviously.
Yeah. So my understanding is SB 11, it removes penalties if someone was human trafficked, forced into prostitution. They could come forward and say, I was forced to do this, and they wouldn't be held accountable for, say, prostitution.
Well, that's exactly right. So we give them that affirmative defense on the front end of the process, so they can claim that at the beginning. So years ago, back in 2009, 2011, 13 timeframe, a lot of the legislation to stop human trafficking I was blessed to carry were doing things like sealing the records, right? Sealing the records of a victim that had, prostitution charges and so forth, so that it could be upwardly mobile again. So they'd have the opportunity to go back to school or the ability to get a job without that kind of proverbial scarlet letter on their chest, so to speak.
Yeah.
So all of those things now, when I say we've turned it upside down, we've changed that whole dynamic now with this piece of legislation, because those incredibly courageous survivors can now get help on the front end of the process before a prosecution ever were to occur. So you're exactly right.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, it's amazing that that you've decided to be a champion for this, and it sounds like, like you say, you've been doing it since 2009, right?
Yes.
And that's awesome. I'm glad that there's someone championing it. I am curious, is it purely just as a father? You say that you saw what was going on. How did you? We're all aware, I guess, that human trafficking happens, but why is it so important to you?
Well, look, as a father of daughters, I just kind of put myself in the shoes of those other parents that their children have been innocent victims and have been trafficked, and you just go, my God, this is horrific. And then you see these precious children. You meet some of these precious children. When you see babies, I said, 3 or 4 years old. Candidly, I'm aware of cases of babies that are truly babies, infants. It's the most disgusting and demonic activity that you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And so, I believe that in the time the Lord has given me in this life, the ability to be a senator and ability to serve in public office, that we're here to make a difference. And so to work to bring some light to this horrific darkness is what's been driving me for almost 20 years to try to make a difference in these areas.
Yeah, that's amazing. As a father of 3, I can't help but commend you. I would guess that human trafficking has dropped off at least a little bit with the current with the Trump administration, their enforcement of border control a lot more heavily than in the past. I would imagine that human trafficking has dropped off a little bit. I'm sure it's still happening quite a bit. But I also wonder, so I'm wondering, is that true? Has it dropped off? I've also heard that human trafficking is sort of a problem in the homeless communities, which is, obviously growing in certain localities here in Texas.
Look, I'm very thankful to the President Trump and his administration for securing the border. We've been working on that for a long time in Texas. I've been in the middle of that fight as well, because it all is interconnected, right? At the end of the day, it's we're talking about border security. What is it all about? It's about safety and security for the people of Texas, and frankly, for the country. And so, the reality is that human trafficking, may or may not, I'm not seeing any new data, if you will, to show that we're actually seeing a reduction in that. But there's no question that President Trump and his administration are doing a tremendous job of getting so many of these folks that are here illegally in our country, that are criminals, out of the country.
Yeah.
And so many of them were, in fact, involved in trafficking. So there's no question in my mind that what they're doing will make a huge difference in the fight. We just haven't seen any specific data yet. But there's no question what they're doing is helping tremendously. So I want to thank them. I want to thank all the brave men and women of ICE, all those folks that are out there on the front lines, all of our law enforcement, right? Our Texas DPS, all of our incredible sheriffs and police and so forth, on all those border communities across Texas and across the entire state that are in the middle of this fight every day to stop trafficking and to stop the cartel activity and all the crime broadly on the border. Vitally, vitally important. So it's so wonderful that after 4 years of this open, porous border where trafficking was running wild, all these things were happening, to now have a president and an administration that takes this issue very seriously and is highly, highly engaged in stopping it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to switch gears just a little bit. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention about human trafficking, SB 11?
No, I think that gives folks a good understanding of where we are. Again, it's with the governor now. It's on his desk, and I expect the governor to sign it here in the next few days as we conclude the special session. But very grateful for Governor Abbott's support. Like I said, the lieutenant governor, my colleagues in the Senate, and my colleagues in the House that have understood the importance of making stopping human trafficking a major priority of what we do legislatively here at the Capitol.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about the July 4th, the flooding that happened at over the Independence Day holiday. Obviously, that turned the special sessions into, it became a focus of the special sessions, providing disaster relief. I think SB 5 and SB 2 in this second special session, did they pass, or are they still?
Everything right now, there are a couple that are still, those bills still are working to be finalized.
Okay.
We've got a full package of bills, right? So including Senate Bill 1 that just got out of the Senate, as you know, about 10, 12 days ago now. We're working to finalize all of those bills in this overall package.
Yeah.
But the overall package is what I want to really focus on right now, because we're in the special session. Things are literally changing minute by minute. We hope to land the plane on all of these bills here before we adjourn sine die. But if you think about what we're doing, we're really working to provide support and resources to the men and women of Central Texas that have gone through the most unimaginable times the last couple of months.
Absolutely.
We're really providing financial resources to help them rebuild with a federal match. We're putting in place new infrastructure so this never happens again, is our prayer. Real siren technology, if you will, that will make a big difference, making certain that all of these campers, if you will, all these cabins anywhere in these areas in the future will have, basically things like a weather radar, a ladder, that will have plans on file with our Department of State Health Services so that we know exactly what's happening with every one of these camps. We know they have a disaster plan in place. We know that it's not only with the Department of State Health Services that's certified and regulating them now with more teeth, but that we also have a disaster plan on file with TDEM, the Texas Department of Emergency Management. So all of those kinds of things that we're doing will make an enormous difference, along with training. The training of more first responders to be able to help in these kind of horrific situations where you got very fast-moving water. I don't think we talk about enough the fact that thousands of individuals were saved because of the brave men and women that were on the front lines doing these rescue efforts, obviously in July. It was incredible what they were able to accomplish. And so we need to develop more individuals with those capacities and those capabilities. So one of the things in this package of legislation that we have is a new training center dedicated to being able to help people have these skills to be able to rescue folks in high water, fast water moving type of situations. But then beyond all of that, of course, Senate Bill 1 is so important that we recognize what happened to those precious children that lost their lives, so many from Camp Mystic and others. But when you think about what happened, we should never, ever allow a camp to operate in a floodplain overnight ever again. I'm not saying that we can't have these camps operate and do daytime activities around the water and floodplain areas. That's fine, no issues. I'm not concerned there. As long as we follow the proper safeguards I talked about. Emergency plans put in place, the siren technology, new weather controls to be able to detect, if you will, what's happening in terms of micro weather bursts. But we've got to make certain that a child never sleeps in a camp overnight in a floodplain ever again. And that, to me, is the core of what we're trying to accomplish with Senate Bill 1, for example, along with all the other bills that I just referenced, that those are the elements, if you will, of this overall package that's built to focus on restoration as well as training and making certain that these things never happen again to precious children here in Texas, so that the memory of these precious babies that lost their lives, that we never forget them, ever, and that we're doing these things in their memory, so that future generations of Texas families and Texas children will not suffer the way that they did.
Yeah. So a few things on that. I guess first, making sure that there's no campers camping out in the floodplain.
Yes.
I think that makes logical sense. I think there's also probably several camps that are already there in the floodplain. What do they do?
Well, look, I mean, here's the bottom line, is that if there's a camp today that has shelters, if you will, they're cabins that are in the floodplain, they're going to have to relocate them. It's just that simple. They're going to have to find a way to relocate the housing areas of their camp. They can still have all their activities alongside the water and the floodplain and so forth, fun daytime activities. But at night, we can no longer tolerate that after this horrible tragedy that has occurred. We need to learn from the lessons of history, and we need to make certain that those camps understand that, and that they recognize it, and that they modify, if you will, their operation to make certain that campers are not there in the floodplain overnight.
Yeah, and so as far as the funding goes for all these different systems, the sirens, the weather monitoring systems, all the different things, are those grant funds, or are those reoccurring every year?
So we're putting a couple $100 million in of Texas taxpayer money, and that's broken down a lot of different ways. $50 million, for example, just for siren technology. So you think about that. $24 million for new weather technology. Devices and capabilities that will enable us to be able to determine these microbursts and what needs to be done. But basically, with the money that we're putting up as Texas, we're getting a federal match. We're getting federal dollars that will then help support more broadly all of the restoration efforts, if you will, in Central Texas. So that money is really a one-time money.
Sure.
And the same really effectively for what we're doing here in Texas. We think that this initial $200 million appropriation from Texas, coupled with the federal match, is what we need to get things done and to really get people back on their feet. Obviously, we need to continue to pray for all those families that not just lost their loved ones, of course, the most horrific thing in life, but we have so many people that are still affected, they're out of their homes, their lives have been turned upside down. They are looking to try to really get back to life, so to speak, right? But again, most important, we got to continue to focus on praying for these families that lost everything in a precious child.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Or any loved one for that matter.
Of course. So the system's going forward, as far as I guess the camps have to report to the Texas Department of Emergency Management. Is that right? Well,
so the camps are going to go through a process by getting effectively regulated by the Department of State Health Services.
Yeah. So
they're going to have to approve the plan for each of these camps. So they'll not only have an approved plan, but they'll also have files on file, I should say, these emergency disaster response plans that will be on file with them and with the Texas Department of Emergency Management. But it's the Texas Department of State Health Services that will actually make a determination on whether or not a camp organization is in alignment with the new law that we're working to pass here right now in this special session.
Yeah, and then I guess going forward, funding all of this stuff, is that something that the state of Texas is going to continue to fund, or does it become up to the local jurisdiction, say to, that siren system? I don't know how much maintenance that really requires, but I would hope that they would be able to figure that out through their own budgeting system.
Look, that's my perspective, is that once we put the infrastructure in, all that investment, that the locals then will be able to support it. That's why you look at all the things we've done in our package. I mean, we deal with line of succession. So, in a county, when a disaster happens, who's in charge? What's the line of succession from a county judge on down?
Yeah.
If that county judge is out of state for whatever reason, who's next in the line of succession? Who's next in the line of succession if a mayor is out at a municipal level? All those things were thought through in this comprehensive package of legislation to address what happened, to mitigate it from, hopefully we pray, never happening again. And I want folks to realize this is a once in every 500 year or every once in every 1,000 year event, but we've got to take it seriously. That's what we're doing. Everything in our power to provide restoration and hope to the citizens there while taking care of the families that lost everything with their precious children or other loved ones, and making certain in their memory that this never happens again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if it was once in every 500 years, bad things can still happen.
100%. 100%. Bad things can always happen. We live in a fallen world, and we never know what's going to happen in that regard. So we just have got to be better prepared, and that's what this is all about.
Yeah, I didn't realize that y'all went so deep as to even come up with a succession plan. If someone is out, who then is in charge? Who do we contact? And if that person's out, so on and so forth. That's really detailed.
We're just trying to really put in place detailed guidelines as best we can to address all the different scenarios on the ground.
Yeah. So let's talk about SB 9, I think it is, the Public School Accountability and Transparency. I live in Austin. I grew up in Austin. I went to AISD. I know that this is not about Austin, but there's several schools in AISD that I think 3 middle schools have failing grades, and several others. And I don't think that's necessarily unique to Austin. I think that's pretty common in a lot of different places. And this, I think, is an effort to help those schools get more accountability. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, bottom line is that we want more accountability, obviously, for all of our children in the state. We want to make certain that they're getting a great education to be able to compete globally in a 21st century global economy. Kids graduating, as you did, from Austin ISD are not necessarily competing with neighboring communities anymore or neighboring states. They're really competing on a global stage. So getting a good education is vitally important. We, of course, have a moral responsibility to those kids to make sure they're getting a great education, but we also have a responsibility to the taxpayer to make sure that the dollars that they're investing into public education, they're getting a great ROI, so to speak. So that's what we're all focused on doing. Things like the STAR test in particular, we've had a lot of concerns and issues over the years that the STAR test is about teaching to the test and not about really providing teachers with a broader ability to educate kids and to get them excited about content and the opportunity to grow academically. But at the same time, we're trying to find some kind of accountability measure. And so where we are on this piece of legislation and all the things that we've been doing for years in this space is trying to find that balance between what is the right level of accountability. Does standardized testing make sense? Does it not?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, trying to find a place to land that makes common sense for everybody and a balanced view that we're being able to get an assessment of how kids are doing, but not to provide such anxiety and really difficult situations for children that they don't perform in a simple single snapshot, if you will, on one particular day, and that we have a broader view of what their educational attainment looks like. Those are very important, I think, on how we look at education, and we're trying to find that right balance and all that we're doing to, again, make sure we do the right things for the kids in Texas, while at the same time honoring the taxpayer that floats the boat for all of us every day.
Yeah, I think my understanding is that it's going to be split into 3 different tests: beginning of year, middle of year, end of year, and that they'll get results back within a couple days, and that will give the teacher in the school direct, real time information about how that student is doing and what they need to work on going forward.
100%, right? So that's the whole view about the historical STAR test, having a one snapshot view. Just not being sufficient. And then it took many, many months for the results to come back.
Yeah.
So if you're a parent and, you're wondering how your child did, well, you're waiting months and months and months. And so you don't know what to do and how to engage a teacher to get help for your child.
Yeah.
Now with this different approach, as you said, basically multiple tests that are lighter, if you will, and the demand and intensity over the course of the year will enable us, along with the much faster turnaround in results, to be able to engage and help those kids much more rapidly with their teachers or with a tutor. You'll know what they're struggling with.
Yeah.
I mean, as a father of daughters, I would have loved that. I'm sure you'll love this as a father of children yourself. It'll make a huge difference, I think, in the way that we look at education. I think we'll have better outcomes when we have basically the ability to close the loop and have a more responsive, if you will, process to make change, to educate on weaknesses in their educational curriculum and academic performance on closer to a real-time basis. I think it'll make a huge difference.
I grew up with I think it was the TOS tests and then the TAX tests, and then I think it was the STAR after I left. So I'm an old timer, I guess, in some ways.
Absolutely. And again, it all comes back to trying to find that balance, right?
Sure.
Accountability while not intimidating the kids and putting the kids in a horrific anxiety state, and the parents as well. And not teaching to the test, if you will, to where we take away any flexibility that a teacher has in the classroom to deliver academic excellence and to help a kid really thrive and enjoy a subject matter.
Yeah, and I would think also that the school gets that information on the beginning of year, middle of year, and they can see where their students are struggling to bring them up by that end of year exam so that they get better results.
You bet.
And that's the whole point.
That's right.
So I thought this was interesting. Recently, you spoke at the Greater Waco Chamber about AI and how it's important for Texas to lead not only in innovation but also regulation. And I know that AI is something that's talked about here and there. I haven't seen a ton of regulation and laws being passed, not necessarily just in Texas, but anywhere. I know it's starting to pick up, and it'll probably pick up even more in the coming sessions here in Texas. What are your thoughts on that generally?
Well, look, what an honor for me to be the co-chair of the AI task force here in Texas. I've spent a lot of time the last couple of years on being the Senate leader, so to speak, on AI-related issues. I feel very honored to have been appointed in those capacities. We've been doing a lot of work to understand what's really happening in the AI world and what should Texas do. Look, I'm a believer in federalism, first and foremost. I believe that the states drive the agenda for America forward, not a broken federal government so often. Now, we're so thankful from my Republican vantage point that we have Republican president today and presidential administration and a Republican, obviously, controlled Congress. But that's a new phenomenon as of late, obviously. And so, so often it's been just dysfunctional in D.C. And that's why the states have to really drive innovation and opportunity. All the big innovation that's really occurring is occurring in the states. And if you look at AI, the other states will follow what Texas does. Because we are today the 8th largest economy in the world, very quickly we'll be the 7th largest economy in the world, and we'll surpass the economy of France. We've got to take these issues very seriously. And so other states will follow our lead when we get it right on policy, be it AI related or stopping human trafficking. It doesn't matter. And so specifically with regard to AI, my colleagues and I passed several pieces of legislation, one in particular that I carried that really sets the governance framework for governments, if you will, in Texas. So the state of Texas, your counties, your cities, your school districts, how everybody is going to act, if you will, and respond in an AI world. And of course, so much of that is probably most impacted for Texans in their daily lives by the way state government agencies will use AI, be it the Department of Public Safety, be it the Texas Workforce Commission, be it the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, you name it. So all of those areas now are impacted by my legislation, specifically with regard to addressing the right framework for AI in Texas. And then we also passed another major bill that deals with how AI should be looked at in the commercial marketplace this session. So I was very honored to be a part of all of that. To lead, as I said earlier, on the governance bill specific to governments. Very important policy that I think, frankly, we've put forth the model now for America that the other states can adopt. So we passed, I think, some great pieces of legislation. They've been signed into law now by the governor, and I think they'll make a huge difference in the future of AI. We try to find the right balance. We try to make certain that we have a code of conduct, an ethical code of conduct for the way that AI is to be used in Texas. We make certain that there's always a human being in the loop. We need to always remember when we talk about AI, that AI is a tool. And this is what I talked about in Waco at the Waco Chamber at the Baylor Club last week, per your comment a moment ago, is to make certain that people always realize that AI is a tool to improve human performance, period. But it's a tool for humanity, not the other way around. And so it's vitally important that humans are in the loop, that we have control of what's happening, particularly on important decision-making processes that affect real human beings in their lives and their livelihood and well-being. So it's appropriate to use AI when it's disclosed in all kinds of various processes that get manual or effectively manual, and that you can screen data more rapidly, more quickly. But at the end of the day, we can never lose the human touch, the humanity that we have to have with one another in an AI world. And so that's a big part of what we're trying to do in the legislation that we passed. We also, with regard to the bills we passed, beyond those items, specifically, of course, made certain that we went after bad actors that would ever take advantage of vulnerable populations. And by that, I mean specifically our babies, our precious children. We will not tolerate if a fake has been created, be it by an AI type of process or an individual. We will put those entities that do those kind of things behind bars here in Texas, period, end of story. We will have zero tolerance for that kind of garbage that hurts our children or other vulnerable populations here in Texas. So I want that to be very clear to the public at large as well. And then getting it right with regard to the proper role of regulation was the other key on these bills, because right now, AI is the modern space race. It is the space race of our time. And if we're going to be successful as a country, as President Reagan always said, as President Trump says, there's got to be peace through strength. The reality is that we have to have a technological advantage over our adversarial countries. We all know who those countries are: China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran in particular. And we have to have technology advantage that is beyond comprehension. And the only way to get there is to have innovation be unleashed. And that's the reason why I don't want to overly regulate what we're happening in AI. I want entrepreneurs to drive new ideas, new innovation. I think we got it right in Texas in terms of that regulatory framework, so that America can lead ultimately and win what is effectively the space race of our time. Yep. And that's all AI. If we don't lead and dominate in the AI space, if we don't lead in quantum, if we don't lead in cyber, then we're going to miss the boat. And I was very blessed this session to work in all those areas, to carry the bills on AI, to be the author in the Senate of Cyber Command for Texas, and the author of our new initiative with regard to supporting quantum here in Texas as well. But all of it is interconnected with our ability to be competitive and our ability to be innovative.
Yeah. I want to be respectful of your time. I did want to ask one question about AI, because it's I know that resources are a big issue in Texas, especially water has become a big issue. I know that the electric grid, before the session, I think Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was talking about the increase of the load on the energy grid over the next decade, I think it was. And I know AI and manufacturing is going to take up a lot of that. And I'm wondering, is that something that you're concerned about? Is that something that's going to be focused on a lot more in the future, do you think, as far as how much, because it takes water to cool it, takes a lot of energy to power those things?
Absolutely. The answer is yes to all the above. I've been very involved. My colleagues and I in the Senate have been very involved. The Lieutenant Governor's been very involved in this issue. We worked on these items a great deal here during the interim and during this legislative session in both chambers. And I think we're in a very good place right now, right? We want to be home to business more than any other state in America. We want to have more of these AI data centers, but they do take up a lot of energy. And so I think we put in place practical approaches to be able to address the energy demands while protecting the grid and understanding the tremendous demand, right? I mean, one AI data center can, basically use the amount of energy of a city of a million people. And that's why we're finding creative ways to address those challenges, to enable a lot of those AI data centers to be more self-sufficient, but also to be driving new technologies that can help us address those things, frankly, like the advent of SMRs, right? Small modular reactors for the future as well. Big focus for the governor, the lieutenant governor, and all of us in the legislature. And I think my colleagues and I are making real strides there as well.
Yeah, SMRs would be great. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time and, getting to know you better in this interview. I said at the beginning that you're known for protecting our most vulnerable, and it sounds like you really are, and I really appreciate that work.
Well, it's my great honor. That's why I think, like I said, my wife and I have always viewed it as a ministry to serve, and there's nothing more important than taking care of our precious children, period, end of story. So we'll always work to fight those things while keeping Texas economically vibrant and strong and innovative, and making sure that we're the home of liberty and freedom and everything that we do as best we possibly can.
Awesome. Well, Senator Tan Parker of District 12, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show. Take care. Have a blessed day.
You too.